Part 21. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 201. Before Suwan came to her senses, she saw a man and a woman coming through the door. They were about 10 years old. The boy looked like a queen, and the girl looked like a queen. The two of them noticed Suwan's gaze and turned to look over. They seemed to see that Suwan looked similar to the queen, and their eyes suddenly widened. The princess' eyes flickered directly between the queen, the prince, and Suwan. She pulled the prince to sit down together with doubts and secretly observed Suwan. Suwan took another look at the prince and saw that he had a similar appearance, and felt extremely complicated. She looked at the regent beside her, and saw his eyes following the queen. After watching her sit on the throne, his eyebrows frowned, then relaxed, and he lowered his eyes and looked over. "What's wrong?" His expression was considered calm, but he looked at her with concern. "Are you feeling well?" Suwan shook his head and tugged on his sleeves with his fingers. The prince regent lowered his head and listened. Suwan whispered, "Father, I feel so strange. I am your daughter. You fed me a snack. When the queen came in, she saw me and doubted our relationship. This is very inappropriate. She is the daughter of Qi Min and the regent. She looks very similar to Qi Mi, and Qi Min doubts that anyone will suspect that she has another relationship with the regent." When the regent heard this, he looked sideways at the queen. Her bright face showed no traces of time. Time had added a bit of charm to her, and her appearance was similar to Suwan's. The male queen handed her a glass of wine. The queen turned her head and looked with affection in her eyes. She took the glass of wine and glanced at him. The queen's eyes stayed on him for a moment. The regent looked back, as cold as the abyss. His eyes were calm, unable to tell what he was thinking. The queen raised her glass and said to everyone, "All the envoys have come from afar to attend the ceremony of canonizing the crown princess of Ziliang. I would like to toast you all. Then, drink it all in one gulp." The envoys and ministers of Ziliang stood up and drank from the glasses of wine. The regent did not move, and Suwan drank a glass of wine for him. Everyone in the palace looked at her. They had not noticed it before, but now they were shocked to realize that she looked so much like the queen. Everyone's minds became excited. They heard that the queen was found in Dazhu. Judging from Suwan's age, could it be the queen's child who was away from home? "Have you found it now?" The queen couldn't help but look over and saw the regent covering his mouth with a handkerchief and coughing. His pale lips were stained with blood through sharp eyes. Her eyelashes trembled and she glanced at Suwan again calmly. "Zhou Wen went to receive the regent and Suwan yesterday. When she came back, she told her that the regent was in poor health and Suwan was taking care of him. The two had a close relationship. She didn't sleep well the whole night after hearing this. Today, it was really too close. Everyone is welcome." As soon as the queen finished speaking, the sound of silk and bamboo sounded in the hall, and the dancers filed in and danced gracefully. The queen looked at the male queen uneasily, and the male queen gently patted the back of her hand to reassure her. Suwan did not wait for the regent's answer. She kept observing the queen. She seemed to be very dependent on the male queen. She couldn't help but observe that the male queen was also a military commander. She was a bit frail in appearance. She was not as powerful as the regent, and her appearance was also slightly inferior. Anyway, in her mind, the regent would be good anywhere. While thinking wildly, someone suddenly came over in a hurry and whispered a few words into the queen's ear. The queen's expression changed drastically, and she left the table quickly without having time to explain. Everyone had different expressions, and the male queen whispered, "The imperial concubine is not in good health." The queen went to visit her to see what was going on. The queen dismissed the people around her and took only 2 confidants with her to the harem. The palace door closed heavily. The queen entered the Bisha cabinet in the innermost room, and the strong smell of medicine spread out, with a bitter taste. Lying on the bed was a thin woman. In addition to a female doctor, there was also a person waiting on her. "Sister, how are you?" The queen came closer and sat on the edge of the bed. The appearance of the two people was very similar, as if they were carved from the same mold, but compared to the queen, the person on the bed was much thinner. When she heard the queen's words, she opened her eyes with difficulty and said angrily, "My bones hurt." The queen's eyes were wet, she touched her forehead, it was hot, and asked softly, "Have you taken any medicine?" She shook her head, and her brain throbbed even if she moved slightly. The female doctor quickly said, "I vomited all the medicine I took, and the soup you gave me before. I also vomited it out. If I can't take any more medicine and food, this situation." She didn't say the last words, but the queen knew in her heart that it would be impossible to survive like this. Because of this, the queen made the decision to confer the title of crown princess in advance, send documents to the other three kingdoms, and invite them to watch the ceremony. In fact, she wanted the regent of Great Zhou and Suwon to come over. I originally thought that it would take a lot of trouble to get the two of them to come over, but I didn't expect that they would come on their own initiative without having to plan. "Sister, I invited your old friend here without permission." The queen was lying on the bed, almost next to Chi-Min. Seeing the blankness in her eyes, the queen's mouth was filled with bitterness. "Let them come to see you tomorrow." The mother emperor was pregnant with a pair of twins. In other countries, a pair of female fetuses would be a happy event, but in a country where a Ziliang woman is the emperor, it is a misfortune and only one of them can be chosen. She was born weak from her mother's womb and was likely to die young. The eminent monks of White Horse Temple once said that she was unlucky and that she could not bear the royal wealth, so they took her away and raised her until she was 18 years old before she could return to the palace. Therefore, she was declared to the outside world. Gave birth to a princess, who became her sister, and her identity was hidden. The mother emperor had an agreement with her father that the child she gave birth to would be given to him. Therefore, the queen mother found an opportunity to leave the palace to escape the summer heat, and sent someone to send her sister to the kingdom of Zhou. She announced to the public that the princess had been taken away by gangsters and her whereabouts were unknown. She was weak in body but extraordinary in intelligence. Every time the queen mother saw her at White Horse Temple, she would sigh and think of her outstanding sister who was far away in Zhou dynasty. The other sisters were mediocre and their abilities were not worthy of their ambitions. The queen mother mentioned her sister in her ears more and more every year. Until her sister suddenly came to Dazhu to seek medicine for her beloved man, the queen mother had an idea. When the emperor's sister was rebellious and her throne was in danger, the emperor went to Dazhu in person and gave her a fake death medicine without telling her father. On the grounds that if her sister did not take the medicine in time, her fake death would turn into real death, she forced her father to do so. Compromise and let her take the person away. Everything was planned by the queen mother, but she never thought that the poisonous poison in her sister's body would harm her and make her forget everything in the past. The elder sister became a sharp sword in the hands of the queen mother, eliminating the hidden dangers of the queen mother and becoming a qualified queen in the queen mother's heart. Until the queen mother arranged a marriage for her sister to marry the son of General Wei Yiwen. The elder sister knew that this was hers and agreed to the marriage. On the day of the wedding, she boldly played a trick and deliberately made herself sick, with a sickly look on her face. In this way, she pretends to be her sister and comes forward to get married, so others can't see the flaw. In the future, the emperor and the empress will need to appear at the same time. The elder sister will either act with the male empress, or she will pretend to be the elder sister and the male empress will appear. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 202. Her elder sister often said to her, "Sister, you should get well soon, so that I can give you the throne and you can be with the queen all day long." What if I am infertile and the courtiers call me a concubine again? Her body got better day by day, and when she became pregnant, the two of them completely changed sides. But I couldn't bear it, so my sister helped to handle the memorials. In the eyes of the people in Ziliang, she and her sister were just one person. No one except her close friends knew that they were twins. Before her sister remembered the past, she didn't know how to tell her sister about the regent and Suwon. My sister married someone else in the Zhou dynasty and had another child. If the regent cared about it, he had already been ruthless towards his sister and invited her here rashly. He didn't know what the consequences would be, so he gave up the idea. But now that the situation is critical, she can't care so much. The regent is still unmarried, maybe, he still has feelings for his sister? But what she saw today made her hesitate. One is my sister's lover, and the other is my sister's child. If the two of them are, wouldn't it be a blow to my sister? Seeing her sister's current appearance, the concerns in the queen's heart disappeared. He is your old friend Indigo. The queen's throat was choked. Do you remember that the queen mother once lost you? She didn't throw you away. It was your father who was Indigo, and the queen mother gave you to your father. You have lived in Dazhu for 16 or 17 years, and you have two very important people. Really, Chi Min's head hurt, her bones ached all over her body, her stomach felt uncomfortable, and she was so confused that she couldn't think clearly. The Dazhou in the queen's mouth was extremely unfamiliar to her. If she was in good health, she might even ask her about her father and old friends. Now that she is alive today, she doesn't know if there will be a tomorrow, day after day. The torture, those past events are no longer important, gone. She raised her hand with difficulty and touched her face. Ugly. The queen's tears rolled down, and the guilt in her heart almost overwhelmed her. Regret. If earlier, she planned to invite the regent to come to Ziliang, would the situation be completely different? But I have invited people over. They entered the palace today. You are not in good health today and we will not see them. I will dress you up tomorrow. How about meeting them? The queen hugged Chi Min and acted coquettishly as usual. They came all the way to see you. Chi Min twitched the corners of her lips, seeming a little helpless, and compromised. If I'm good, I'll see you. The queen nodded and did not look up for a long time. It wasn't until Chi Min fell asleep that the queen raised her head, her eyes red, and ordered the female official, go and keep the regent of Zhou and Misu and arrange for them to live in the palace. The female officer went to do it immediately. The female doctor just said worriedly, Queen, do you want to give Master Mingju's medicine to her? I'll think about it again. The queen didn't dare to take risks. The medicine was too strong. If she could survive it, Chi Min would be alive. If she couldn't, she would die immediately. She asked, is there really no other way? The female doctor sighed, every possible method has been tried. If you are worried that she can't bear it, why can think of other methods to recuperate her body and use it after she is better. After a pause, she hesitantly said, Wei Chen heard that the regent is not in good health. Miss Su next to him is the miracle doctor of Dazhu. Why don't we ask her to give it a try? The author has something to say. Recommended by my friend Yan Qing from the entertainment industry and Su Shuang's article The group's favorite the movie King's immortal wife is sassy and beautiful. Synopsis, Ji Shu went down to earth to go through a tribulation, and accidentally saved someone but got her immortal roots involved. In order to get back her immortal roots, she had to participate in a talent show and invited the best actor Lu Yan to practice double cultivation. On the first night of the draft, she knocked on the door of her mentor Lu Yan, but was thrown into the trap by the man. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 203. The queen fell silent and whispered, "Miss Su will come to see my sister tomorrow, let's talk about it then." She covered Chi Min with a quilt. "Take good care of your sister," the queen told the female doctor. The female doctor looked solemn and said, "Yes, I will do my best." The queen walked out of the palace and was greeted by the female officer guarding outside. She asked, "Is the banquet over?" "The banquet is over." The female official glanced at the palace with lanterns not far away. "Your Majesty, the regent of the Great Zhou dynasty and Miss Su are staying in the Yaoguang Hall." The queen pondered for a while and said, "Go and invite Miss Su to Mingxin Hall, I want to see her." "Yes." The female officer stepped back. When the queen returned to the Mingxin Hall, the queen was wearing normal clothes, sitting cross-legged on a blanket and reading a book. The stove next to her made a crackling sound. This warm and quiet scene made people feel warm in their hearts. She couldn't help but sigh when she thought of her sister. "How is Minmin?" Fan Yuheng raised his head, closed the book in his hand, waited for the queen to sit over, and raised his hand to smooth the wrinkles between her eyebrows. "Yang Yang, don't be sad, Minmin will be fine. Miss Su has a miracle doctor. Maybe she will find a way." The queen hesitated and said, "Wan Wan and the regent." The regent looks at Wan Wan like a junior. Wan Wan is already married, so how can he have any other relationship with the regent? Fan Yuheng interrupted the queen's words and said warmly, "The regent is alone and came to Ziliang specially, you should know why. Wan Wan is Minmin's child, so he takes care of her." The queen suddenly became enlightened and suddenly thought of Su Wan looking at her curiously when she went to the palace banquet, knowing that her mother was the queen in Ziliang. "The two of us have similar looks, so the ministers may be suspicious." The queen was very embarrassed and didn't know how to give everyone a reasonable explanation. Fan Yuheng enlightened, "The Supreme Emperor chose Minmin for the throne. Because of me, she helped both of us and just returned the throne to you. She didn't know she had a child, so she asked you to canonize Yin'er as the Emperor Princess. When Minmin remembers the past, ask her for her opinion. Should you make your identities known to the public? Or should you return the throne to Minmin and tell the people of Ziliang that Wan Wan was left behind by the people? Daughter, let her recognize her ancestors and return to her clan." The queen was stunned. "Then you?" "I made a mistake. The queen put me in the cold palace and found another opportunity to leave the palace." Fan Yuheng sighed, "I have tolerated your concubines in the harem for a long time." The queen understood instantly and couldn't help but chuckled, "I hope sister will get better soon." She turned her eyes and suddenly remembered something, "Sister and I will switch over. Let's leave the palace. Not all concubines in the harem are sisters." "Yes. Then the regent? He shouldn't mind." A smile appeared on Fan Yuheng's lips, "That is Minmin's concubine." The queen saw in his eyes that he was enjoying the show and glared at him. "Your Majesty, Miss Su is here," the palace maid preached outside. "Invite her in." Fan Yuheng held the queen's hand and sat cross-legged on the blanket together, looking casual and friendly, without a sense of distance. While being able to close the relationship, it was easy to take off people's guard. Sure enough, when Su Wan came in, she saw two people sitting casually on the ground. The sense of distance between them was instantly broken, as if they were seeing family members, and their tense nerves relaxed. "Sit down," the queen pointed to the opposite side. "Did you enjoy the palace banquet?" "It's okay," Su Wan answered truthfully, wondering why the queen invited her here. "The first thing is to find out the identity of the person in front of you." "Are you thinking that I am your biological mother?" The queen was slightly startled when she met Su Wan's prying eyes, and immediately understood that Su Wan had doubts about her identity, or, "Who am I?" Seeing the kind smile on her face, Su Wan wondered whether the queen was trying to trick her, or whether she was simply showing kindness and had no other ill intentions. She carefully avoided the important point and said lightly, "If His Majesty is not His Majesty, then who is it?" "You don't have to be cautious," And don't be afraid. The queen poured a cup of tea for Suwon with her own hands and pushed the pastry in front of her. I noticed there were spies from the great Zhou dynasty in Ziliang. Those people should be from the regent. You already know that the queen is Min, so you came here specifically to see her. Suwon was on guard. The queen of Ziliang is indeed Min to the outside world, but she only served as queen for a few years and gave up the throne to me. I actually took her place and sat in this position. The queen touched her face and smiled. Said, Min and I are twin sisters, she is the elder sister and I am the younger sister. Suwon was stunned and asked subconsciously, then the prince and princess. The queen and Fan Yuhang looked at each other and said, our child. After a pause, she explained, my sister has not married the queen and has no children. You are her only child. Suwon was stunned. The news was too sudden, but for her father, it was great news. Then, my mother. I will take you to see her tomorrow. The queen wanted to tell Suwon about Min's situation, but was stopped by Fan Yuhang's look. She had to say, I came to you today to let you feel at ease and have a good sleep. Suwon had many questions. For example, she was not married and had no children. Why not go back to Dazhu to find them? But since he was not familiar with the queen, he suppressed his doubts and stood up to leave. Seeing Suwon leave, the queen frowned and said, why aren't you allowed to tell me? You said today, I'm afraid they won't be able to sleep tonight. How can the regent's body bear it if he doesn't sleep well today? Just tell them the good news today. If you feel better, your body will heal faster. See you tomorrow. Please inform them of the specific situation beforehand. Fan Yuhang picked up the book on the side, opened a page and said, Your Majesty, hurry up and deal with the memorial. Queen. Early the next morning, Suwon and the regent were waiting in Mingxin Palace. About half an hour later, the queen came down from the morning court. The two people sat quietly in the chairs. Have you had breakfast? The queen asked. Suwon said, I've used it. The queen glanced at the two people. The regent's eyelids were dark with blue shadows. Fortunately, he was in good spirits. Before I go to see my sister, I have something to tell you clearly. Suwon and the regent looked at her. After my sister woke up from Dazhu's fake death, she forgot about her past. Don't blame her for not looking for you. The queen's eyes fell on the regent. When my sister came to Ziliang to ask for medicine for you, she mentioned you to me. You are alone now, and you came to Ziliang specially. Are you not in love with your sister? If so, I hope you will be mentally prepared. Her situation is not good, and she will be exhausted. The cup in the regent's hand shattered, the fragments cut into his palm, and blood dripped to the ground. Suwon was shocked and immediately said, I'll give it a try, maybe it can be cured. Then she anxiously treated the regent's wound. The regent avoided Suwon's hand and wrapped it casually with a handkerchief. Take me to see her. Come with me. The queen took a look at his wound, turned away the people around her, and led them to the palace where Min lived. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Bao. Chapter 204. The palace was very secluded. As Suwon walked along, she found that the palace was heavily guarded. Standing at the closed door, Suwon stared at the center of the door panel. The paper was all black and she couldn't see clearly what was going on inside. She moved her nose and smelled a strong medicinal smell. Thinking of the queen's words, Mother not only forgot the past, but also ran out of energy. Is this why she didn't come back to Dazhu? Suwon felt very heavy and turned her head to look at the regent beside her. The regent's eyes were fixed on the door with a heavy gaze, and the ink in his eyes was turbulent. It seemed that all the emotions were gathered together and about to burst out in a majestic manner. He moved his hand, but stopped in mid-air, as if he couldn't open the door in front of him. The dried blood in the handkerchief was dyed red by fresh blood. Suwon's heart suddenly lifted. No need to think that the wound would definitely open. Squeak. Suwon opened the door in one go. Sunlight instantly filled the room, and the thick, bitter smell of medicine released inside, staining his eyes red. When the queen saw this scene, her heart felt sour and bitter, and she was deeply touched. If there hadn't been so many worries back then, wouldn't the two of them have gotten married long ago? She wanted to hurry up and get in. "Father, do you want to go in?" Suwon asked softly. This title was like thunder on the ground, which stunned the queen. "Father, father. Biological. Or did you recognize him halfway?" Before the queen could figure it out, the regent walked inside. Suwon followed closely behind, worried about the regent's condition and worried about Chi-min's condition. "I wonder if it is caused by the mother-in-law." The regent untied the cloak that was wrapped around him, threw it on the wood on the side, and pushed open a door inside. The dim scene inside suddenly came to mind. The regent's eyes were locked on Chi-min on the bed, and she fell into a slumber. The bright and beautiful face in the past was thin and pale, but it was not as aggressive as it was back then, and it was a little more gentle and weak. She was very uncomfortable, sleeping very uneasily, her brows were furrowed, and the fingers on her side moved, trying to grab the mattress. Her hands were not strong enough, so she just grabbed it weakly, as if she was holding on to him. There was a bloody hole in his heart. He approached the bed, held her hand, leaned close to Chi-min, took her into his arms, and gently stroked her back with his other hand. Chi-min was particularly afraid of pain, but she was stationed at the border and on the front line, so injuries were inevitable. Every time she returned to the camp, her face turned white from pain, but she managed to hold on. Seeing that he was distressed, Chi-min opened her lips and smiled. "When I feel pain, just hold me and pat my back, and I won't feel pain any more then." A sly flash appeared in her eyes. "You can also kiss me." His heart suddenly felt like it was being grasped by someone. It hurt so much that he bent down and hugged Chi-min tightly. She was so skinny that she seemed to be embedded in her bones and blood, and no one could separate them anymore. "Min, it doesn't hurt anymore." The regent stroked her back gently, and Chi-min's trembling body slowly calmed down, and she was quietly held in his arms. Suwon stood aside, feeling unspeakable. His movements were very familiar, as if he had done this thousands of times, and there seemed to be no gap of more than 10 years in between, and there had never been any separation. She turned her back and raised her hand to press the corners of her eyes. The queen also turned her head and looked out the window. She couldn't bear to look, but she didn't dare to look. The queen mother is selfish. They are two sisters from the same mother. She was sick and raised in the White Horse Temple for more than 10 years, without any worries. She also met her childhood sweetheart and the man who has been with her for life. They came together and gave birth to a son and a daughter. My elder sister left the queen mother when she was young and was raised by her father's side. She fought on the battlefield and had a loved one, but they couldn't be together. She was forced to marry a man she didn't love, and was forcefully taken back to Ziliang by the queen mother. Her flesh and blood were separated. After more than 10 years of being alone, he ended up on a sick bed with a long life. The queen felt very guilty. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the room suddenly changed. The queen was keenly aware of it. She turned around and met Chi-min's confused eyes. "Sister." The queen's nervous palms were sweating. She was even more nervous than the first time she pretended to be her sister to visit Fan Yuheng. She stared at Chi-min for a moment, watching her motionless in the regent's arms, as if she hadn't relaxed yet. After coming to his senses, he quickly explained, "These are the two old friends I told you yesterday." Chi-min blinked and raised his eyes to look at the man's resolute chin. The contours were cold and hard. Even though there was a sick air lingering between his brows, the power in his bones remained undiminished. "Let go first." Chi-min struggled for a moment, then glanced at Suwon aside, and his eyes froze. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 205. Chi Min looked at Suwan's face in surprise. Suwan happened to be standing side by side with the queen, and their faces were 70% or 80% similar. It was impossible for her to suspect that Suwan had anything to do with the queen, because the queen had already stated that these two were her old friends in the Great Zhou dynasty. But the little girl in front of me is only a teenager. She has been in Ziliang for nearly 15 years, so the answer is obvious. The little girl in front of her is most likely her child in Dazhu. And the person holding her tightly, strangling her so hard that she couldn't breathe, might be the love debt she owed. The thought passed by in a flash, and Chi Min was no longer calm. Her body fell back. The regent let go and gently put her back on the bed. Her messy hair covered her face. He brushed her hair away naturally, revealing her pale face. It doesn't hurt anymore. Chi Min hadn't yet digested the news, which touched the deep affection, self-blame, pity, and even imperceptible pain in his eyes. She couldn't help but move back. Such strong and complex emotions made it impossible for her to adapt to it all at once, and she even had some resistance. To her, the person in front of her was just a stranger she met for the first time. Her eyes glanced at the queen, eager for the queen to introduce their identities. The regent saw the strangeness and self-protection in her eyes, as if a poisonous poison was at work, and the heart-piercing pain spread. He wished that all the past of the two people could be stuffed into her mind, making her heart pretend. Get off him. Don't be too hasty. The hands on his knees were clenched into fists, trying to hide the hideous veins on the backs of his hands. His Adam's apple slid and he said in a harsh voice, I am Ji Xian. Turning his head, he introduced Suwan, this is my daughter, Ling Zhao. After a brief pause, he let his facial muscles relax and thought he wanted to smile at her, but in the end he just twitched the corners of his lips. Does this name sound good to you? Chi Min saw that his eyes were slowly turning red. The moment she turned her head, she seemed to faintly see the light of water. Soon he turned his head, his eyes were so dark that no light could pass through, as if it was her illusion. Suddenly, I just felt a dull and uncomfortable feeling in my heart. She nodded slightly. My wife and I met in Yunzhong City and fell in love with Lingzhao Temple, so we named it Lingzhao. Ji Xian paused for a long time before he slowly said, my wife once said that she wanted a boy, a girl, and a boy. Then I called Yun Zhao and gave me a lot of them to make a good one. Chi Min's eyes were inexplicably astringent. She couldn't figure out where this emotion came from. She stretched out her hand and wiped it on her face. Her hands were wet. She is very committed to her promise. After more than 10 years, this unfinished agreement. The regent paused, his dark eyes locked on hers, trying his best to resist the urge to wipe away her tears, and said hoarsely, you think she will keep her promise? Chi Min didn't want to answer. The regent's words were considered offensive to her. But there was a voice and an impulse in her heart, urging her to say, if she is a person who keeps her promise, she will definitely keep her promise. As soon as the words came out, Chi Min reacted, opened her mouth, gently looked away, and said without looking at him, this is all based on the fact that the relationship between the two people has not broken down. The word broken almost tore apart the calmness he tried so hard to maintain. Suwan noticed his mood swings and raised her hand to put pressure on his shoulders to calm the atmosphere and asked Chi Min, I am a doctor, can I take your pulse? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 206. Chi Min's eyes fell on Suwan's face that looked like hers. Ji Xian said she was his daughter, and Ji Xian's closeness to him, as well as complex emotions, and even the promise, there was no doubt that they were the two of them. Children. She knew that Yunzong City was a small city on the border of the Great Zhou dynasty. It had a beautiful name, but the fields were filled with yellow sand, but the sunset was magnificent. Chi Min closed his eyes, nodded slightly, and put his hands on the bedside. Suwon went over, squatted beside the bed, rolled up her sleeves, revealing a thin wrist. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, and she felt for the pulse with 2 fingers. Her calm face suddenly became solemn. "How is it?" the queen asked eagerly. Suwon did not speak, but opened Chi Min's eyes, checked her mouth and tongue, then opened her clothes, and saw a black swollen bump, which made her feel a little better. She put down her sleeves, put Chi Min's hand back into the quilt, and then looked at the female doctor waiting aside, tell her about her condition and how to use the medicine in the future. The female doctor glanced at Chi Min and went to the outer hall. Suwon followed and walked out of the inner hall to the empty and cold outer hall, which made her shiver with coldness. When MRSG was hunting in the winter that year, she was stabbed with an arrow in her back. The arrow was smeared with poison. Her condition was very critical. She was immediately sent to Bama Temple, where Master Mingja scraped the bones and treated the poison. However, the poison was still left. Master Mingja's medicine suppressed toxins and prolonged MRSG's life, but she suffered from severe bone pain every day, so she would give her a medicinal bath to relieve pain. The female doctor took out a porcelain bottle and handed it to Suwon, Master Mingja's first 2 years. Thinking of using the method of mutual generation and mutual restraint, several poisons were used to make this pill. Because it was a very poisonous thing, the vitality of MRSG's body and bones was exhausted, and she was afraid that she would not be able to bear it. The queen kept suppressing it until she had no choice but to use it again. Bet. Suwon pulled out the cork, smelled the smell, twisted her eyebrows slightly, covered the cork, and put it in her sleeve pocket. "Show me the medicine she takes every day and the medicinal bath recipe. Give her some medicine. Master Mingja's idea is very good, and the poison of this pill can neutralize the poison in Chi Min. It's just that my foundation is too poor and I need to take care of myself." "Okay, I'll get it right away." The female doctor entered the inner hall and took out the prescription and medicine bottle. "They are all here." Suwon carefully looked at the prescriptions for oral administration and medicinal baths, thought about it, and got a rough idea. Turning back into the inner hall, there was a large pillow behind Chi Mi and she leaned on it, feeling as if it would slide down at any time. The regent stood by quietly, his eyes falling on her face for a moment. Chi Min seemed to be uncomfortable with the sight, so she turned away and slowly ate the food fed by the female officer. But after eating less than half of the bowl, she couldn't eat any more. The prince regent picked up the water next to him and handed it over. The female officer was startled, quickly took it with both hands, and fed Chi Min carefully. Chi Min lowered her eyes and drank 2 mouthfuls of water. Her eyes drifted to his blood-stained handkerchief. Her heart felt as if she had been stung. Her eyes became more and more confused. This was because she had forgotten everything in the past, but her body still had memories. Feelings for him. "Sister," the queen saw that Chi Min's thoughts were wandering, and she called softly and asked, "Are you feeling unwell?" Chi Min shook her head and told the female doctor, "Bandage his hand." The regent's eyes trembled and he stared at her firmly. He stretched out his hand to Suwon and asked her to handle it. Suwon asked the female doctor for the medicine box and took off his veil. The veil covered the blood scab and grew into the wound. When it was torn off, the healed wound tore open, blood gushed out, and the palm of the hand was bloody. When Chi Min saw this scene, a picture flashed through his mind. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 207. Chi Min was stunned, her face changed, and she stared at his palm in astonishment. A strong sense of familiarity swept over her, as if she had seen it somewhere before. She tried hard to recall, but her mind went blank, as if someone had struck her head with an axe. The pain made her pale and make her sweat break out. Don't think about it, Min Min. A hand covered her eyes, and the breath of ambergris enveloped her completely. Chi Min took a breath and wanted to look over. His slender fingers pinched her chin and tilted it towards the inside of the bed, and then he retreats. The queen sat beside the bed, blocking Chi Min from looking at the regent's hand, and whispered, "You go back first and let my sister take a rest." The regent wanted to stay by Chi Min's side, but he was worried about Chi Min's rejection of him, so he didn't push too hard. After Suwon bandaged the wound, the father and daughter left together. The queen heard the door close and the footsteps getting farther and farther, and she breathed a sigh of relief. "Yang Yang, tell me about them." Chi Min looked out the window and saw only a bare branch. The queen saw that there was no color on her face and she was in low spirits. She thought for a while and said softly, "Ji Xian is the regent of the Zhou kingdom? He was the famous god of war in Zhou more than 10 years ago. You and your father, the old general, have been living in the border town." The two met. Later there was a war, and you were kidnapped by the enemy. It was he who single-handedly entered the enemy's army to rescue you. The two of you had a close relationship, and the Zhou royal family did not allow you because you had the blood of the Ziliang kingdom. Married to him, but for some unknown reason, you broke up with him, married into Dingyuan Marquis Mansion, and gave birth to a daughter. Later, because the imperial sister rebelled and wanted to usurp the throne, my health was not good. The emperor brought you back from Dazhu. I didn't expect that you would lose your memory. As for some of the details, the queen concealed the past. Speaking from her mouth, it was too one-sided. She only hoped that Chi Min would think of it by herself and understand the whole truth. Chi Min frowned. "Am I married?" "Well, marry Sujihong." The queen sighed. "I always thought that Wan Wan was Sujihong's daughter, but I didn't expect that she was Ji Xian's." Chi Min was very confused. She broke up with her lover, married another person, and gave birth to her ex-lover's child? Then you tasted the forbidden fruit before getting married? Sujihong knows. Chi Min looked at the state of Ji Xian and Suwan, and it was obvious that they recognized each other. The queen didn't know what to say. She hadn't sent anyone to Dazhu for so many years. After all, Chi Min died in Dazhu. If anyone noticed the clues, many variables would arise. It was Chi Min who was dying, so she sent someone to Dazhu. Only then did she find out that Suwan was not doing well, and it was her fault after all. "What are you going to do, sister?" The queen hesitated and said, "Ji Xian has never married. He should be waiting for you. In the past 6 months, his health has not been good, especially the mother-in-law between you two. The mother-in-law is in you here. If you die, he can't survive. If he is dead, it can't hinder you." Chi Min's expression suddenly changed. "Where is Zigu?" The queen nodded. "Send someone to White Horse Temple immediately and ask Master Mingzhu to come and remove the mother-in-law poison from us." Chi Min's heart was so tight that he felt like he couldn't breathe. Her body couldn't deceive anyone, and there was nothing about Ji Xian in her mind, but her body's reaction told her that this was the person he loved deeply. Chi Min even wondered whether her amnesia was an accident or man-made. The author has something to say. Babies, if nothing unexpected happens, there will be an update, but it will be very late. Everyone, go to bed early and get up to watch it tomorrow, okay? The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 208. A cloud of doubt came to mind, and Chi Min kept thinking about it. Seeing that Chi Min was lost in thought, the queen did not tell her that Master Mingzhu of White Horse Temple had been studying for more than 10 years and still could not get rid of the mother-child poison. Suwan is a miracle doctor. After taking Chi Min's pulse, his expression was solemn. However, he followed the female doctor out to ask about the situation. When he came back, he seemed a little more relaxed. "Is this sure?" she asked the female doctor. "What did Wan say?" Miss Su didn't say anything. She just asked Wei Chen for the prescription. The female doctor recalled Su Wan's look at the prescription and guessed, maybe she can do something. The queen frowned, not expecting much. Thinking of Master Mingji's medicine, she turned her head to look at Qi Min and told the female official, "Go to White Horse Temple in person to invite Master Mingji." Yes, the female officer was about to leave. Wait a minute. The queen walked out of the inner hall and saw the door next door closed. She lowered her voice and said, "Don't let anyone see the queen. The Supreme Empress is practicing in White Horse Temple. If she knew that Ji Xian and Su Wan were coming, I don't know what she would do." Yes, the female officer disguised herself and took people to the White Horse Temple. Su Wan and the regent returned to Yaoguang Palace. The regent lay on the imperial concubine's couch, closed his eyes, and pressed his forehead with one hand. "I can cure mother's poison. I thought it would take some effort before, but Master Mingji developed the medicine. I will replenish her body in the past few days and give her some medicine." Su Wan's eyebrows were filled with sadness. Sighing, "It would be great if there was a century-old ginseng. It could extend her life and hold her breath. Maybe she could get through it more easily." The regent suddenly opened his eyes and looked at Su Wan with a little warmth in his eyes. "The gift list includes a century-old ginseng." "Really?" Su Wan's eyes lit up instantly, and she said excitedly, "No, I want to go back to Siyi Pavilion now and get the ginseng." The regent finally had a smile on his face. "Don't worry, don't you still need to take care of yourself first? My father will send someone to get it tomorrow." Okay. Su Wan brought a table and sat next to the regent. She held her chin with her hands and stared at the little birds flying on the branches. She said in a low voice, "I took my mother's pulse. Apart from the mother poison and the poison, there are no problems. She thinks very clearly, and it doesn't look like her brain is damaged, so it's not like they said she was taking a drug to fake death, because the poison can cause amnesia, unless she is psychologically traumatized, which is selective. Forget the past. But mom is a tough-minded person and it's not like she forgets because of stimulation." Su Wan suspected that someone had tampered with it and deliberately made Qi Min forget everything. The regent exuded a frightening aura of violence. "Can it be cured?" "I'll give it a try." Su Wan didn't dare to say too much, but she picked at her fingernails and said, "I want to take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of your mother-in-law poison. Wait until your mother has detoxified." As soon as these words were spoken, the room fell into silence. The regent looked at Su Wan and saw that her body was pressed against her legs and her face was buried in her arms. "Zhao." Su Wan ignored it. The regent was silent. "Are you angry?" Su Wan remained silent. The regent panicked. Su Wan spoke, "You two have a deep relationship. If you lose either of you, you don't want to live alone and follow the other person. Such unswerving love will be so touching when it is spread. It will definitely become a good story. But you also it's selfish, and being your descendants may be their misfortune." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruan Meng Baobao. Chapter 209. Su Wan slowly straightened her back. Her face was calm, which could be considered very calm, and she looked at the regent calmly. "You only remember the pain you have endured, but ignore your children, facing the pain of losing both parents at the same time." She raised the corners of her lips and smiled coldly. "Your life is yours. It is up to you to decide. If you want to live, I will treat you. If you want to die, I will bury you together." Su Wan didn't want to listen to any more explanations from the regent, so she got up and went back to her bedroom. throwing her into bed, feeling that she had nowhere to vent her anger. In order to cure Jixian, Suwan devoted all his energy and worked hard to study medical skills, but he was afraid that he could not save Jixian's life. In the past few months, his whole body had been tense and he did not dare to slack off at all. The situation is very optimistic now, and Qi Min's condition is not bad. Suwan's mind is full of treatment plans. When everything is finalized, she plans to get rid of the mother-child poison at the best time, once and for all. Ji Xian's words hurt Suwan's heart. He didn't want to get rid of the mother-child poison before Qi Min recovered, so he was determined to die with her. At that moment, the tight string in Suwan's mind broke. She could understand Ji Xian's mood, but she couldn't forgive it. She didn't want to be sensible or considerate. Suwan was too tired and just wanted to indulge her temper at this moment. On this day, she did not go out to eat. Zhao, you didn't have breakfast today. If you don't eat lunch, you will starve your body. Ji Xian knocked on the door and heard no movement inside. He sighed, don't be angry with your father. He was a demon before, I didn't think carefully about it, and I didn't take your feelings into consideration. My father will not despise life, and your mother will be fine. Suwan covered her head with the quilt in frustration. Father, admit your mistake. Zhao, come out and I will apologize to you. Ji Xian knocked on the door again. The room was quiet. Ji Xian put the food on the ground and made no sound. Ji Xian stood guard at the door, and Suwan ignored him. He didn't even want to live, so why should she worry about him? Not only lunch, but also dinner, Suwan didn't come out to eat. Ji Xian looked at the table of cold food and then at the dark room, knowing that Suwan was really angry. Luo Cheng looked at his master, then at his young master, and scratched his head, will the eldest lady be starving? Ji Xian lowered his eyes and whispered, go and tell me that my chest hurts. It's probably because I'm sick. Luo Cheng's eyes widened. Are you making up lies to trick the young lady into coming out? I'll go right away. Luo Cheng left, and Ji Xian ordered the palace maids to withdraw and put on a table of new dishes. A quarter of an hour later, Luo Cheng came over dejectedly, but stopped talking. Don't want to come, Ji Xian frowned and couldn't help but worry. Luo Cheng glanced at him cautiously and said with a strange expression, the eldest lady said that you were sick, and my subordinates have been waiting there for a quarter of an hour. You think you are going to die? Come over quickly and send you to a female doctor. Ji Xian raised his head and said, Luo Cheng, how do you coax your daughter on weekdays? Give her a horse to ride on, and buy her sugar-coated hawse, a beautiful skirt, and a headband. Luo Cheng kept count of his treasures, with a smile on his face unconsciously. She loves to watch circuses. Every time she can't be coaxed, I take her there. Holding me so happy that I giggled and called daddy. The regent was stunned, looking at Suwan's dimly lit room with deep eyes, and then realized her mood. What Luo Cheng said was all about the children when they were young, surrounded by parents who held them in their hands and pampered them. In Suwan's childhood, there was only Mrs. Su. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. The favorite of the Nongmen group, the female supporting role is a full-level boss. Author, Ruanmeng Baobao. Chapter 210. For both Suwan and him, the missing period of growth was an irreparable shortcoming. She finally got a father and mother, and they tried their best to treat her. The meaning behind his words broke her heart. Is she disappointed in them? The more the regent thought about it, the more he blamed himself. He got up and walked out of the palace. After a pause, he remembered Suwan's meticulous care for him, and then went back to get the cloak and put it on. Master, where are you going? Luo Cheng saw Ji Xian walking out of the hall and quickly chased him out. The female official went to the national temple to invite Master Mingja down the mountain. The secret guard who was hiding and watching immediately told the news to the Supreme Queen who was practicing on the top of the mountain. Your Majesty, the female officer beside the Queen will ask Master Mingja to come down from the mountain. After the secret guard finished speaking, he waited for the Queen's instructions. The Supreme Empress is sitting cross-legged in meditation, holding Buddhist beads in her hand and chanting sutras. At the age of 60, his hair is black and shiny, with not a single white hair in sight. His face is smooth, with only a few wrinkles at the end of his eyes, and his brows reveal the majesty of killing and decisiveness. Even after practicing in front of the Buddha for 11 or 12 years, he still remained calm and peaceful. After hearing what the secret guard said, she stopped moving the beads and slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were sharp and showed no compassion for those who could escape into Buddhism. Is the Queen in bad health? The Queen is fine, probably. The secret guard seemed to be talking about a taboo, and the last part of the title stuck in his throat. The Queen snorted coldly and was very dissatisfied with Chi Min. When Chi Min lost her memory, she arranged a marriage for Chi Min, but she went against it and asked Wei Yang to marry Fan Yuheng on her behalf, making all the civil and military officials of the Western Liang dynasty look like fools. That's all. In the end, he simply gave up the throne and gave up the throne to Wei Yang. He has never touched any of the concubines in the harem. Although the Wei family was important, Chi Min was her daughter. All the portraits of the sons of the ministers were presented to her for her to choose from, but Chi Min did not know what was wrong and rejected them all. It wasn't until Chi Min was poisoned by an arrow and her health deteriorated that the Queen completely stopped. No matter how much the Supreme Empress had objections to Chi Min, she still couldn't help but ask, seriously. The news came from the palace yesterday that the oil has run out and the lamp has dried up. Crackling. The rope of a string of Buddhist beads broke and the beads fell to the ground. The Supreme Empress stood up suddenly with a cold look. Why didn't you report it to me yesterday? The secret guard knelt on the ground and said, Your Majesty, please calm down. You once told me to pay attention to Master Mingja's movements. Madam Chi's affairs are not allowed to be mentioned in front of you. Bang. The Supreme Empress kicked the secret guard over and shouted, Prepare the car. The old grandma who was waiting outside was surprised and uncertain. Do you want to go back to the palace? The Supreme Empress did not reply and walked out in anger. The old nanny did not dare to delay, and immediately trotted to prepare the carriage. The secret guard thought of the news that came from the palace today, and quickly got up from the ground, and quickly caught up with the Queen. A few steps behind her, there is news from the palace. There are still 6 days to canonize the crown princess. The first 2 days of the great Zhou dynasty, the regent and the daughter of Marquis Ding Yuan have arrived in Ziliang. The Queen held a banquet yesterday and left them to stay in Yaoguang Palace. The Supreme Empress was furious, and she had a strong desire to kill him. After all, he was a Buddhist powerhouse. Go and receive the punishment yourself. She quickened her pace to the foot of the mountain, and the carriage stopped just in time. The Supreme Empress did not wait for the help of her old nanny and got into the carriage. She ordered in a cold voice, Hurry back to the palace as quickly as possible. The author has something to say. Ouch, babies, good morning, okay.